The Passion Fruit podcast is a part of Lumity Media Productions. Lumity is an educational media company creating and facilitating engaging and thought-provoking content. Lumity offers a social education mobile app designed to elevate your content consumption experience. The platform offers a curated space for sharing and discovering book, podcast, video, and article recommendations. Through a community of thought leaders and passionate learners, Lumity aims to inspire curiosity as well as lifelong learning. Join Lumity today to build your learning community while you learn and grow both personally and as a collective. Okay, so for the second episode of Passion Fruit, I decided to keep it within the family and bring on my incredibly inspiring sister, Brianne Keil. Brianne is someone who has never been afraid to make her own path and march to the beat of her own drum. A fiery Scorpio, Brianne's passion is not to be doubted. What she sets her mind to, she accomplishes, and I'm extremely fortunate to have grown up under her wings as her younger brother. Someone who is in tune with the world around her, Bree embodies the healing properties of Mother Earth and embraces our oneness with the universe. Through her passions for women's health, Ayurveda, and education, she has shaped her life around holistic practices that we can all take note of. In this episode, we will talk through Bree's unique journey that has taken her all over the world, from Thailand to Vietnam and now to Guatemala. We will discuss her passion for being an educator as well as a student and uncover some of the truths she lives by. Get your notepads out because I already know we're going to learn a thing or two from this one. I hope you're as excited for this episode as I am. And with that, let's jump into Passion Fruit, episode number 2 with Brianne Keil. Breezy Bree.
Wow,
live from Guatemala.
Sweet words. My eyes are watering up, but I've cried a lot this week, so no more tears. Tear-free combo.
Yeah, tear-free combo today. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being the second guest.
I'm honored. Thank you for having
Likewise. How you doing this Friday night?
Yeah, it's been a wild week. I had a really nice long weekend last weekend, like a nice holiday, so I think those blues coming into a work week. Yeah, and then just some little events here and there, but having a glass of tea, enjoying a quiet Friday evening, and been planning for this convo.
Nice. I also got my tea ready.
Yeah,
I figured
what's
it
in
was
your cup?
fitting as some like lavender stress relief.
Nice.
But I know we've talked about Brie with tea, or tea with Brie at some point coming to fruition. So
Tea
thought maybe
with
this would be a
Brie.
nice little rendition.
Yeah. This is like first edition of Tea with Brie on passion fruit. So when you come on my podcast, it will be a passion fruit tea.
There we go. So to jump in, I want to go back to, and this is kind of part of why I'm so excited to have this conversation with you, because I'm not even totally sure. We weren't as close back then. So I'm really excited to kind of pick your brain and talk through some of your past life. And so I want to start in the spring or summer of 2016. You're about to graduate with a degree from UCF.
Yeah.
Communication Sciences and Disorders. Had to fact check that one with mom. So talk to me about what's going through your head in terms of what's next. Where were you at mentally that told you going straight into the corporate world was not for you?
Yeah, good lapse back to kind of where it all began. I mean, everything is beginning at so many different points in time, but this chapter. So I guess it was a little bit before, because I graduated in August of 2016, but it was like my junior year of university. So communication sciences and disorders is essentially to become a speech therapist, but to become a speech pathologist, you have to get a master's degree. And at this point, I was debt-free with thanks to many factors and forces. And so my junior year, that's kind of when you have to start taking the GRE and applying to grad school. And then also within my major, it's predominantly women. I think there was maybe 2 dudes. So it's like that, also that higher level of like stress and productivity and, women on top of things. But there's a lot of stress around getting into grad school in speech pathology. It's pretty competitive. And I saw this chick who was a friend of my mellow coworkers, and we started
Mellow
chatting.
mushroom.
Mellow mushroom, the good old days. So we started chatting, and she was a year older than me, and so she said, yeah, I'm graduating like next week, but I'm not walking in graduation. And I said, oh, why not? And she said, I'm moving to Taiwan. And I said, whoa, Taiwan. Honestly, at that point I don't even think I would have any idea where Taiwan was on a map. And I said, oh, nice. What are you going to Taiwan for? And she said, well, I'm about to graduate. I don't have a job. I don't have a boyfriend. I don't have any debt. Why not? I know someone there. She works at a kindergarten teaching English. She can help me. I'm going to go stay with her for a bit. And it just planted the seed, because I didn't even really know that existed. But Liam, who Liam of him, maybe not personally, at that time, he was teaching English online to kids in China. And I started asking him about a TEFL certification, which is teaching English as a foreign language. And it's a certification that you can get in university. So yeah, it planted the seed. I was like, I don't have a boyfriend. I don't have any debt. I don't have a job lined up. I'm not really trying to get $75,000 into debt by going to pursue a master's program in speech pathology. I've worked with kids a lot. Why not? And so pretty much from the end of my junior year into my senior year, I started bringing this idea to life that, okay, I'm going to teach abroad. I've never been able to be abroad. I didn't get to study abroad. So this is what I'm going to make happen. And August, I was graduating. I was still working at Mello. I had started talking about it, that this is what I was going to do. And then, people are coming forward and are like, oh, I have a friend who did this, or, oh, I did this. I met people who just got back from doing this. And so, the foundation started to build, and then graduated, moved back home. 2 months of holy shit, how am I going to make this happen? I've been saying I'm going to do this, but I have no idea. Found a Facebook page of a kind of like a middleman organization that helps you. And at this point, I had decided Thailand, because I wanted to go to Asia. I knew there was a big calling in Asia. I graduated with my TEFL certification, so I knew I'd be able to find work. And yeah, 2 months. In 2 months, I made it happen. I left on October 28th,
Wow.
2016.
That's pretty amazing what can happen when you put energy into the universe and just put effort and thought and passion into something. And when you're committed to something, it usually just finds a way of working itself out. You mentioned you knew you wanted to do Asia. What was the calling? Because I mean, it's not very easy to graduate from college and move across the world. So why did you feel so called to Asia, and specifically Thailand?
Well, at that time, so this was a while ago and pre-COVID and everything, and in some ways it's probably still somewhat true, but Asia just has the biggest demand, the biggest calling for English teachers, because it's so academic. People really want to learn. Asia in general, different countries. I'm not trying to conglomerate and pretend like Asia is one place, but lots of different countries in Asia. It was just the highest demand. It's where the most drive for that skill or that willingness in some cases, like all up until pre-COVID, I would say you could go to China and make a lot of money. And even now you still can, but obviously things have changed a bit. So Thailand then became, there's China is a big place with lots of people, and I knew I wasn't really interested in Chinese culture that much, or didn't feel that much of a draw. Growing up in Florida, I wanted to be somewhere warm and beachy, even though I ended up living in the mountains. So I just said Thailand. I don't know. I just kind of chose it and ran. And Thailand also has a big tourism sector. So there's definitely like a friendliness about Thailand that made it feel like it would be possible. And it definitely was. I mean, I did
That you
it.
did.
So yeah.
And so obviously a huge culture shock going out there. What were some of the biggest adjustments you needed to make upon getting there as a fresh graduate. I don't know what, 22 years old,
22.
walking around in this foreign land.
I turned 23 there. That was my goal. I said I want to turn 23 in Thailand, and I got there the end of October. My birthday's, yeah, like you said, Scorpio power,
Mm,
mid-November 17th. It's funny, right? How when we look back on the stories of our lives, it's really easy to have rose-tinted glasses and remember the good, which I guess I'm thankful for. I'm glad we remember the good, but then that's sometimes when it's hard to learn the lessons, maybe. Obviously, language is huge. I was living in a really small town, so people didn't really speak English that much. Of course, some people, but yeah, language is a thing. And I'm feeling that right now as I really study a language. But that feels good because
mm,
Thai I didn't really super study. I just kind of learned from the environment. So I never learned how to read it at all. And it's symbols. And I guess what is also just kind of comparing now to where I am, the sensation of looking different than everyone around you. In Thailand and Vietnam, people immediately know that you're a foreigner. And I
mm,
guess in some ways, then they have less expectations of you, which is nice because now in Latin America, I feel like I do blend in more, but then it's always a surprise when I can't do certain things. So I think also a big part was friendship. I'm so blessed to have such a strong community of friends. And that was actually part of the reason that I needed to leave the country and go halfway across the world because I felt like I was so interwoven to these relationships and I didn't really know who I was. Classic young 20-year-old girl, early
mhm,
20s-year-old girl, I mean. But yeah, I think I went into it thinking, okay, these are other people who have decided to live this life like me. They must be cool. We must have things in common. We're certainly going to be friends. And when I first got there, there was probably 12 or 13 other foreigners. Luckily, I did make a few good friends, a couple good Thai friends, but I think that realization of friendship and of course the importance of it, but also that it's not always easy to just like make good friends.
for sure. They are a dime a dozen. And I plan to get to your core group in a bit, but I think that speaks volumes to those relationships you have with them and just how powerful relationships can be. And I think that's what fascinates me the most is your willingness to take that leap when you did have such a tight knit group. You could have stayed in the States, could have stayed in Florida, been with all those girls, and stayed in that comfort zone and done very well for yourself. I'm sure a lot less stress on the parents and all that, but you took a leap, and I think that's powerful. So I guess that's a good place to kind of dive into. Do you mind sharing some key lessons that you learned from your time in both Thailand and Vietnam? Total 5 years, right? Was it three Thailand, two Vietnam?
Reverse. 2 years in Thailand with a little bit of space in between. I came back to the States and worked at a ranch in Colorado for one summer. That was
Oh
cool too.
yeah.
And also caused mom and dad a lot of stress because they're just like, oh my God, our daughter is 24 and going to work at a summer camp in Colorado. Like, what the hell? But, you know, how can you boil down years of life into a
Mm,
few lessons? It's definitely not easy. But so yeah, I guess at this point I'm kind of going into year 6-ish, maybe yeah, like 6-ish years of living internationally. And obviously when I was this little 22-year-old girl getting on a plane crying and feeling good, but like wow, going to Thailand, I had no idea that this would become an integral part of my identity. And in some ways, that's worrisome. This is something you and I haven't really talked about that much, but just this past year of life, I've kind of transitioned out of being vegetarian for like 10 years and I'm eating meat again. And it's these things of our identity that they're really easy to attach to. And there's definitely been
mhm,
moments where I'm like, am I just gripping this international part of my identity? Does this make me happy? Is this the life that I want to live? Is this what I want to keep doing, or am I just attached to being the different girl who does these wild things and is nomadic and lives in around the world? Like, that's cool. And I think I'm cool for doing that. But I think also it's the lessons, one of the first lessons is this deep knowing and recognizing that nothing is really right or wrong. We all do
Mm,
things differently to get to the same place or trajectory or point. But people in Vietnam do it totally, totally different than Americans. And I think it's really easy to get trapped in the story of, well, my way is right and that way is wrong. And then that comes down to our individual levels of our emotions and how we're relationship dynamics. And yeah, but I'm right and you're wrong. And it's actually, no, nobody is. That doesn't even really exist. We just feel and perceive and do things differently because of our lived experiences. And yeah, some are more efficient than others. Sometimes there's more pain than others, but there's no right or wrong. So I remember Asia being really solidifying of that. And do I remember that in every moment of my life? Of course not. I'm a human. And I think kind of in that same light, there's so many forms of bravery. I know I'm brave for choosing the life that I have, but also paying a mortgage and being in one place for 25 years to pay that off and be in one job for all of that time. I mean, there's no shade. Everybody's path is different. Everybody's life is different. And of course, that's another lesson. But in some ways, that to me is brave. I don't know if I ran away. I don't know if that was part of what this was running away from things that I was scared to do. I definitely do have a lot of money anxiety and trauma, so that could be part of it. And then, yeah, I guess a third lesson that I can summarize in this moment, and one that is so hard for me, probably so hard for all of us, a lot of us, comparing,
mm.
comparing ourselves, comparing our accomplishments, our bodies, our what we have in a bank account, what we own, how happy we are, how sad we are. I have struggled with comparing a lot in my life, and it's such a work in progress to trust that every decision I've made was exactly what it needed to be to put me here and now, because this is for the highest version of my evolution,
Mm.
and to trust the path that I'm on, to trust the cosmic divinity that guides my life, to not doubt that.
Yeah, I think that's powerful, and I think those lessons all are intertwined, and even your bouts of comparison, I think you look to the other two lessons of there is no right or wrong.
Hmm.
Everyone's on their own path to mitigate that comparison, and that
Hmm.
am I as successful as this person or as successful as that person? Because from it just depends at the lens. Success is very much not objective, subjective.
What is success?
And exactly. And for my book, I think it's fucking amazing what you've done, and being able to graduate from college. A lot of people don't even want to leave their hometown. You moved across the world, stayed there for 5+ years, came home for a year or so, and now you're back in another foreign land, no friends, no real good knowledge of the language, and that's pretty cool and shows your strength, shows your courage. But to your point, people working regular jobs in their hometown with the mortgage, with the family, raising kids, that takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength as well. So I think it's yeah, it's pointless to compare because it's just a futile effort. And the most important thing is continuing to follow your path. And that's what has always been so admirable from my point of view watching you. And it's also allowed me to have the courage to take some jumps myself and
Hmm.
you've bared the brunt of some family judgment, and me quitting my job and going on a road trip around the country was a little bit easier since you graduated and moved across the country, never took a job and or never took a corporate job and started teaching little kids in East Asia. So I'm thankful for you being able
Mm,
to be willing to do that. And
yeah,
what I deem as my personal success, a lot of the things can be attributed to you and the leaps into the unknown that you've made. So I'm certainly
yeah.
thankful for it, and I
Well,
deem you successful.
thank you. And I do just want to add one little bit on there of there was two things, but one escaped my mind already. But this idea of a regular job, in a lot of
Hmm.
ways, I do. I have a regular
Yeah, you do.
job.
Yeah,
I go
teaching.
to
Yeah.
work every day. I have a house that I live in. I have to order water and wash a lot of dishes and cook all of my
Mm.
meals. And I think it's easy to have this misconception of, wow, you lived in Asia for 5 years. Were you meditating and traveling? And no, I'm a teacher. I work at a school. So
Yeah.
my life is blessed, and in some ways, and I think what it ties into is that not everybody would choose this life. You have to love learning for sure. That was the other thing that was the second thing. It's a love for learning and exposing myself to opportunities to learn. And I understand that that's not everybody's main desire. And for me, international teaching is the best kept secret. I mean,
Mm.
the schools are better. Like if once you get a good job, once you get yourself up, I just went back to school this past year to get my education license to be an official educator. Next year I'll probably do my master's, to be honest, because my school that I'm at now helps with that and more money. And the schools are good. They're sometimes more progressive and more alternative. They're international kids. Life abroad is good in a lot of ways. I mean, again, with privilege that this is a whole nother layer and a whole nother, I don't know if we want to go into this on this podcast, but my life is really good here. And I've done a lot of hard work to make that so. But for me, the pros outweigh the cons. Yeah, I can't get Amazon really usually. There's things I can't buy organic that I would like to be buying organic. There's more stops in my grocery list because it's things are in different little places and you have to figure out where's where and what's what. And at the same time, I can afford to have a farm deliver unpasteurized milk and organic beef to my house. I can afford to have somebody help me clean once a week, that I don't have to every Saturday fucking sweep and mop my floors. You know, there's certain things that as an educator, I would not be able to do this in the States. So that was all to
For
say I
sure.
have a regular job, but I do this because there are certain aspects of my life that can very much so benefit from being an international school teacher.
Absolutely. And I want to get into the education side because obviously you haven't been doing this for 6 plus years and getting more certificates and going back to school without a passion for actually educating people. But before we get there, I want to touch in on the present moment because we hadn't really gotten into it too much. But you are in Guatemala, Guatemala City. July, you moved, right? Mid July.
July 19th, yeah.
So, how'd you decide on Guatemala? What went into that decision? What's your present situation like? Just give some insight into present day where you're at.
Cool. Yeah. The present has been going quickly. Hey, wow. 2 months. It
Mm.
was 2 months a couple of days ago that I've been here, which in some ways also that trippy thing of time of it also feels like what it's only been 2 months. I feel like I've been doing this for like a long time. Like, am I burning out? But so yeah, so after Thailand, I was in Hanoi, Vietnam for 3 years, and a decent 2/3 of that basically was during COVID. So that like puts
Mm.
that taste on all of that chunk of time of all of our lives. And again, the rose tinted glasses. In a lot of ways, I was really happy in Hanoi. I would say community was incredible. And that was kind of the purpose of moving to Hanoi. Thailand was a lot of working on self. I was in a small town. I spent a lot of time on my own. I wanted to move to Hanoi because I wanted to transfer what I had grown and what I had grown into a community. And Hanoi is a bustling city with tons of expats, a huge expat community, which is expatriate for anybody listening that might not know that term, just people who don't live in their home country. For various reasons. Vietnam has such a history, which we won't go into in this podcast either, but I have lots to share eventually. So there's a huge expat community there. So in Hanoi, I made and met some of the most beautiful humans of my life. And I was a part of a community. I had a role in the community. I was leading women's circles and meditations. And this is when a lot of the menstrual education started to come into my vision and into my sharing. And I was hosting things and friends with people who were hosting things and yoga teachers and retreats. It was alive and it was palpable, the energy of Hanoi. And it was hard. It was gritty. It was raw. Oh, Vietnamese culture is tough, tough. And so I always called Hanoi this beautiful juxtaposition because life was so easy and magical and beautiful there, but also really hard and raw and rough in some ways. And so after 3 years, COVID started to kind of chill out. This was August 2021. My visa was ending. I didn't want to get another job for a whole nother academic year. I hadn't seen anybody at home for 3 years. It was time to go home. Went through some heartbreak, went through some big decisions, went back to school to get my education license because I said, you know what, if this is my life and if this is what I'm going to keep doing, I need to have the papers to back me because this is how I up-level my skills and also my opportunities. So I went back to school, did an online program, was a student teacher for some months, did it all, graduated with really great experiences, learned a lot. And in like October of last year, kind of started looking for jobs because international schools hiring season is like November, December, January. I got hired from this school in November, like 2 days before my birthday. And at that point, I started to realize I did love my time in Asia. The cultures that I got to be a part of and the people and the experiences I got to have, of course, shaped me and are deep in my heart. But I was ready to be closer to home. You know, Asia's like a 30-hour, if not more, travel time. And I wanted to be closer to home. And honestly, I really wanted to start learning a language that I want to speak. I learned enough Thai I was okay at Thai. Vietnamese, I didn't put that much effort because I was like, this is my second country. I'm going to leave. I'm not planning on staying here that long. So I really started looking into Latin America. Again, I'm a connector. I like reaching out to people, getting word of mouth, getting feedback and input, messaging people on Facebook. I'm on a couple pages of international teaching, just started planting the seeds, joined this kind of like a LinkedIn, but except for international schools all throughout Latin and South America. And you upload your resume, you can talk to schools via there. They had a job fair that I went to. And this school just really resonated with me. So in some ways, it's difficult because Guatemala is a very Catholic country. So it's not very progressive overall. And this is an American bilingual school in the city of Guatemala that basically the prestige go to. The kids that I'm teaching are very much so the top class of this country. And because of that, I mean, the school is absolutely beautiful. The campus is green and vibrant, and all of our classrooms are open window, open door. We're outside a lot. I'm outside a lot. Definitely progressive in the educational lens, moving towards more whole child learning and student-centered thinking and project-based learning. And there's definitely cool initiatives going on. I personally enjoy the bilingual structure, which it's hard not to drip into to the education conversation when describing where I am. So sorry if I'm getting a little
No,
ahead.
please do. Please do. Yeah.
But the bilingual system is cool because the kids have half their day in Spanish and half their days in English. I teach them all of the English subjects. A Spanish teacher teaches them the Spanish subjects. So again, you want to talk about work-life balance. I mean, man, I did my student teaching at, again, a kind of cool progressive public school in Florida. And it was a lot of great initiatives. The kids were getting a really great education, but damn, did that homeroom teacher have a lot on her plate because she taught them all day. All day. She was at work at probably 6:00, 6:30 in the morning, leaving at 5, and sometimes struggling to pay her rent. And again, that is not the life I want to live. Educators work so hard, and I do not want to struggle if I'm working that hard. And I know that a lot of people work very hard and still struggle. I understand that. But if I have the opportunity to do my best to not, I'm going to try. So yeah, Guatemala City is cool so far, what I've explored. I haven't explored too much. I don't have a car yet. That's probably going to be like a next calendar year thing. And I think that will open up a lot more. But slowly but surely finding different places, meeting some friends, branching out. It's a city, but it's pretty green. There's definitely nature around. And it's beautiful. The weather is beautiful. This is probably like the nicest weather I've ever lived in.
Yeah, Central and South America, they have a pretty nice landscape there that allows for some nice climate as well.
I was going to say like little interesting microclimates.
Yeah,
Because then
very
I
much
went to the
so.
beach and it's hot, it's tropical, it's what I'm used to, like that constant upper lip sweat. But here I'm at like probably like a 5,000 foot elevation. So there's like a nice little microclimate of
Mm.
cool weather. It's like Cali. We have very similar weather to each other at this point of our lives, I think.
Yeah, which I'm very grateful for, that upper lip sweat, rocking this mustache. Florida was a little too spicy for me, so I appreciate the California breeze out here. So yeah, you alluded to it, you hinted at it. Let's kind of dive into the education piece. Like I said, you haven't been in this space for 6+ years just because it's the way to get by. You have a passion for education. You are naturally a teacher. You are an inspiring one at that as well. So what, from your experience, how do these foreign nation, and it's kind of hard to group them all together. You've done it in a few different countries now, but how do they compare to education systems in the US? What's your perspective on the comparison, and is one better, is one worse?
Well, remember, there's no better or worse. There's
Yeah,
just
there's no
different.
better, there's no right or wrong. Yeah.
So, and that's hard because to be completely honest, I've never really worked at a school system in the States. I did a student teaching for 3 months, but I was very much so not the head teacher. I was a mentor. Sorry, a mentee, I guess. I was being mentored. And in the States, I worked in like a lot of childcare. I mean, my first job was at the Hunters Green Community Club daycare and then summer camp place. And then that camp in Colorado, and I've nannied and babysat. So I've worked with kids a lot in the States, but I mean, that was the reason that I didn't get a degree in education 10 years ago at UCF, is because
Mm,
I didn't want to work for the United States public school system. And not saying that that's the only option by any means. There's definitely other ways. But at that time, with the knowledge that I had and what I felt, I just knew that's not what I wanted to do. So it's kind of funny that I ended up going back to school for education. And since graduating from university, all I've done is teach, really. It's been the main job that I've done. And even from this end, it's not fair to say, because the school that I work at is 1 million times different than a Guatemalan public school.
very true.
I don't even know what a Guatemalan public school looks like. I will say in Vietnam, I worked at a Vietnamese public school. I was the English teacher at a Vietnamese public school. And in that lens, for sure, United States public education is ahead, because these are developing countries, right? Like they probably are 10 to 12 years behind the US in certain ways. But one thing that I think is part of something I enjoy about working at international schools is that a lot of that bureaucratic documentation that comes on top of dealing with children for 8 hours a day in the US, I don't have to do as much of that. I document and I collect data and I'm a part of things, and we have conferences and I definitely do a lot of work, but the amount of paperwork in the US, just like in everything, I don't know, it's
Hmm.
too much for me.
Interesting. Yeah, I think just being able to, I think it just enhances and broadens your worldview, being able to be on the front lines in the education system in multiple nations. And you said to me the other day, because you had some of those parent teacher conferences, just your ability and the role you play is you're telling parents how their children are and how they're learning and how they're developing. And that's such a special, almost like responsibility,
Oh,
such a special place in life you are for these kids. Is that something you've trended towards, teaching younger kids and caring for younger kids? Is there a reason behind that? Is that where you're most interested in these early years of development for kids?
for sure. I mean, it's kind of just always what I've naturally gravitated towards. I think my personality is quite bubbly and animated, and so that lends itself to younger children. And
Mhm.
honestly, when I'm around teenagers, I feel like I don't know what to say or how to act. I don't think I could ever teach middle school, high school. It's just not really me. And I think there's something so special. So right now I'm teaching grade one, so there's six. And yeah, like you said, and I guess that's part of it is there are definitely some kids in my class that they're not strong in English. And so for a very real example, I mean, you want to talk about responsibility. Yesterday, one of my little sweet beans fell off the slide at recess that I wasn't on duty for. She's obviously in a lot of pain, crying. The teacher on duty brings her to me and is like, she needs to go to the doctor now. I'm like, okay, I can take her. Haven't eaten lunch, have to pee, like, stop everything. This little girl broke 2 bones in her wrist and is now in a
Jeez.
cast at recess. And sitting with a little child crying out for their mom, first of all, was one of the most heart-wrenching experiences. And I texted our mother afterwards. I sent her a voice note actually, like, oh my gosh, wow, that just made me so empathetic for mothers of, and I can't even imagine. But this was all to say, like, she then another Spanish woman came who she knew, and the ease of which she could communicate with her was very, 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 very different than how I could communicate with her. And there are times when that's hard. Do I still feel like I'm an integral part of their life? Yes. And part of the reason that I love teaching young kids is because of that love and emotion and like they have no impulse control. And to be honest, I don't have that much impulse control. So sometimes it's chaotic, but I think our energies match each other well. And I love nurturing little ones. And I love that when they're young, they still want to learn. They still think you're cool.
Mhm.
They think it's cool to know that 2 + 2 is 4. They still love school and that hasn't faded yet. I think I like teaching up to grade 4 is kind of the highest I like to go. I have taught grade 5 and 6. Grade 6, I would never do that again. And this is when I was really young too. This is in Thailand. So I feel like a more refined teacher now, and I do love the little ones, but I would be open to having kids who are a little bit more independent and more like can communicate more and just have more critical thinking and yeah, just deep thought and thought-provoking conversations and stuff. But I know that for the next 2 years at this school, my contract is to teach grade one, and then we'll see.
Well, first of all, that's a heartbreaking story about the little girl. Hopefully she's okay and she
She'll
has
be
all the friends
okay.
sign the cast now.
That's what we
And
said,
she's
and we
like the
made her
cool
a big
girl.
card. We made her a big card
Nice.
today. So
But yeah, there's the point about teaching teenagers. It's a different world. I remember from my substituting days in Tampa. It's hard. It's weird. I don't know if that's how we were when we were that age, but I think there's also been some shifting dynamics through social media and stuff like that, which again is a
mm,
can of worms we won't get into. But the the relationship, even, only being 5-10 years removed from being a teenager, it's so different, and it's very hard to relate to them, and it's funny.
Yeah.
but but I think you spoke on it very briefly in the beginning of our conversation. And so I want to move from teaching the little ones to, I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit, to teaching other people. So you obviously have other passions beyond just schooling education. You're very much so intertwined in the, hopefully I'm pronouncing it right, Ayurveda space, as well as women's health, women's reproductive health. So I would consider you a teacher there as well. Talk to us a little bit about that platform that you have and your passion in those spaces.
Hmm. I mean, yeah, I think as you said, and I've come to know this about myself. I'm a teacher. I will always be a teacher. I am passionate about children and I love children, and I don't want to be in the classroom forever by any means. It's exhausting. I don't find that it's sustainable. I don't want to live my life constantly on high energy edge, kind of.
Mm.
It's what I do for now while I'm young and I can, and I love it, and I'm active and I move and I'm thankful for it and I'm good at it. And it's not what I want to do forever. And I guess this is kind of where my other passions weave in. So yeah, I mean, I guess through my own struggles and pretty much the only health struggles I've ever had so far in my life, which I'm thankful for, have been related to reproductive system health and women's health. And I think that's what planted the seed and created my interest and desire to learn and eventually share what I did know about these topics. So yeah, again, I just feel really blessed that I have so many teachers in my life, just different women that I've come across in different phases of my life that kind of first started with menstrual cycle awareness. I was struggling. I wasn't really bleeding at that time at all. I was diagnosed with PCOS. And so then learning about tracking my cycle and menstrual seasons really opened up my eyes and allowed me to start connecting with my body more. And this was all in Thailand. And through that, I started to have a cycle again, which I think was also partially because hormonal birth control was fading off. I think a lot of women get misdiagnosed with PCOS just as a result of being on hormonal birth control for some time. And I started learning more and more about this, which then I was already doing a lot of yoga at that time as well. And then in Hanoi, yeah, just gathering women, drinking tea, having enriching conversations. At this time, still learning a lot more about menstrual cycle awareness, but very much so practicing it, regulating my cycle. And then I found a teacher of Ayurveda who is an incredible woman based in Australia. And yeah, I don't know. Somebody like sent me a class of hers and I attended online, and I just really liked her and I really liked her messages and I liked her work. So I enrolled in an Ayurvedic course with her. And that was also during COVID. So I had a lot of time. And I think that's what I'm kind of struggling with right now. Being an educator in a school is time consuming, and I care. I have passion for everything that I do. I'm a very passionate person, for better or for worse. It gets me in trouble, and it's also gotten me where I am today. I don't know how to not be passionate about things. And so I'm good at my job and I give a lot of energy to my job. And since I've been here, so I did start an evening of astrology club. So that's a nice, basically an informal women's circle. So that feels good. And there are also practices that I'm doing, but I do feel like I know that recently I haven't had the time. But I guess the progression was kind of, I was into astrology, yoga, learned about menstrual cycle awareness, got really into learning about that for my own body and helping my body. And even right now, I'm working with a hormonal nutritionist one on one to try to solve my own really painful periods. And I just did a bunch of blood tests, and I think we found out what the main culprit is. Of course, there's not one answer, but I think we discovered by analyzing science, which feels really, I love the blending of spirit and science. And yeah, ordering some supplements and changing some diet. And that's been a lot of the vegetarianism transition. So really it all just started from my own wounds or trauma or just health stuff. And yeah, I love learning. And then I have a lot of information and I just feel like energetically, even it's my duty to share this. I need to share this with
Mm.
women because we're not given a lot of this education, which is heartbreaking. And it was also this really difficult thing when I was going back to school to come be a school teacher. Like, these are really my passions. I want to work. I just want to work for what I really love. I want to be an Ayurvedic practitioner. I want to be a women's wellness coach. And I felt so strongly about that. And I know that it's possible, but I don't think that I'm there yet in my confidence in myself. And there's also parts of me that like that I can just give that to people for free, even though I know it's worth money and I know that I could charge. And yeah, so I'm just now, I'm about to be 30, and I feel like I'm just now finally marrying the fact that I am an educator, and it's okay for this point in my life to be giving a lot of my heart and soul to one form of education. And again, trusting that this other part of me is still alive and I am still practicing and I am still learning and it is still a part of me. And I hope that the time will come that that's what I can put all of my energy and time into sharing.
Mm. Wow. A lot to unpack there. Yeah, I honestly don't even know where to go. There's so many questions that sprouted up. So I guess in that sense, I mean, I think that's a big reason I wanted to really pursue this podcast as well. Is even I think sometimes we have to do things even when we don't feel ready for them, and
Mm,
I've have had my bouts with fear and nerves and anxiety about starting this, and ultimately I just decided that it just has been sitting on my heart for so long, and it sounds like you've been going through similar stuff in terms of you can feel this. There is energy that stirs inside of you, and when you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, you feel it. And
mm,
to be able to give this platform, again, I'm starting off, this is episode 2, but for this to hopefully grow to where I think it can grow, I'm hopeful for the platform that I can give to people like yourself to share some of those stories and some of those pieces of education and information that you've gone through personally, that you've studied, that you've tested and tried yourself. And so I would encourage you, obviously you have a great setup with where you're at in Guatemala and you're just getting adjusted. You've only been there for, 2 months now, but and you're not, but don't lose sight of the impact you can have. And
mm,
just because it's free doesn't mitigate the value that you add. And I think,
mm,
of course, it'd be nice to make enough money off of the things that we're passionate about to not have to work anywhere else. And then we can just do what we love for work. And that's a powerful concept. And I look forward to the day that I get there as well. Um, but just because you're not there yet doesn't mean you're not being impactful. You're not adding value to people's lives. And from what I've seen on Breeze Garden, I obviously cannot fully relate to women's reproductive health, but from what I've seen and the passion that you have for just the overall space and the overall holistic health, I'm encouraged by it. And I think a lot of other women out there can be as well. And that's why I was so excited to have you as a guest. So, yeah. So, I guess drilling a little bit deeper into this, we can kind of go two ways, more on the reproductive side or more into Ayurveda. I don't know
mm,
what's on your heart right now the most, but personally, I'm still not even fully understanding of what Ayurveda is or what it all entails. You mentioned a little bit of the blend between the spirit and the sciences, and I know it derives from the East. So maybe let's hop into that and elaborate upon like what that is and how you came into it and what speaks to you the most within the space.
Sure. I will preface with I was actually going to go the other way because I
Ah,
feel
okay.
that I'll give
Let's
it
go
like a
the other
little
way.
brief synopsis. I can do both, but I'm also trying to watch the time because I know I can get carried away. So I'll give a little bit of both. And the only reason I do want to talk a little bit about menstrual health is because I'm more versed in it. Ayurveda is the science of life. It is the wisdom of life. Arya means wisdom and Veda means life in Sanskrit. So Ayurveda comes from the time when the Vedic scriptures were being written in what is now India. It is the beliefs around our body's constitutions and how we can best serve the constitution unique to us. So this was developing kind of a similar time to traditional Chinese medicine. So there is a lot of herbal influence. There's a lot of plant medicine influence because at this time, Western and Eastern were merging and also Western medicine wasn't really developed yet. Ayurveda is many practices and many beliefs, a lot around nutrition, a lot around energetic blueprints. So I guess the little brief synopsis can be about the three doshas, which is the most common kind of structure known in Ayurveda, which is we are a balance between these three doshas. And dosha actually means imbalance. What our primary dosha is what we're most easily imbalanced in. And they represent the elements. So Pitta is fire, Vata is air, and Kapha is actually earth and water. And we have a doshic component that we are born into, and then we have a doshic composition that we also evolve into. And I mean, people spend their entire life studying this and becoming doctors of Ayurveda and have learned this from generations of family. And I'm a white girl from America who likes yoga, philosophy, and traditional medicine and Eastern practices. So that's again why I was a little bit hesitant going here because I don't want to pretend that I'm something I'm not or I'm a master in something I'm not. But for me, all of these holistic tools, herbalism, astrology, Ayurveda, menstrual tracking, they're tarot cards, like they are all manifested tangibles of self that help me to understand myself more. If I believe, and I think this is something that Lumity kind of promotes, if I believe that the purpose of my existence is to grow in self-knowledge, then these are tools for me to be able to do that. Astrology can represent my composition on the more zoomed out lens, where menstrual tracking is a very personal day to day, noticing my body's patterns, noticing the intimate, tiny details of this cycle that is keeping me alive and helping me to thrive. And Ayurveda is an ancient tool that has been studied and used for hundreds of years that again helps me to understand how I can best support myself. So, do you want me to keep going into the three doshas?
No, let's pivot. Let's go into women's reproductive health. And I mean, I have a few questions, but I'm happy to let you intro into what you have studied and how it's impacted your life so far.
Okay. I mean, so like I said, the reason that I got really into this is because of my own health issues that I'm still working through. And I just want to say that to any women listening, you are not alone. And it's super normalized that we should just live in a lot of pain and that we should just pop a pill to either alleviate that pain or control our hormones. And what is the worst part to it about it to me is women who are getting diagnosed with PCOS or painful periods or reproductive issues of really any kind. The number one solution is to be just prescribed hormonal birth control, which really all that does is suppress ovulation. You don't get pregnant because you do not ovulate. And when we ovulate is when all of the vital hormones in our body is being produced. That is what ovulation does. It's not just to get pregnant and have a baby. It is when we can get pregnant and have a baby, but it is also secreting minerals and nutrients and signals to our body to produce those minerals and vitamins and the hormones that keep us going. So when women get prescribed this, and again, this is no shame, this is no shade. I was on birth control at a young age, and I think it really messed with my body. And I think that was why I had then 8 months of not bleeding, and then going to the doctor at 21 by myself and getting told, okay, you have PCOS. Literally, here are some alternative childbearing birth methods like IVF, just in case you can't get pregnant at 21. So inappropriate, so traumatizing. And I think that's what started a lot of this. And again, I was blessed to have a lot of older, empowered, intelligent women in my life. And so I just took the knowledge that I could and ran to take sovereignty over my own body. And it's not different. I mean, this was in 2015, but it's not different than what's going on today. Women's rights being taken away and having to fight for the knowledge to protect our own bodies and be in control of our own health. And it's more work to track your cycle. I do my basal body temperature so that I confirm when I've ovulated, so that if I was trying to conceive or trying not to conceive, I would be able to confirm, okay, this is the time to conceive, or this is the time where now it's safe that I'm not going to conceive. I still practice that without even having a partner at this point in time, because it helps me to know my body. And tying into Ayurveda, I'm a very Pitta person, which is fire. I am good at routines. I am good at structure. It makes sense that I'm a teacher. I'm fiery. I get shit done. I'm good at being on task. And so I know that this is easier for me than a very Vatic woman who is the air, who is kind of breezy and airy and can sometimes be overwhelmed, where I lean into frustration and anger, that fire. And again, also a lot of women don't have this education, but it really is. And then even aside from the data of tracking your temperature or journaling every day, you get to know your body, tracking your cervical fluid. And this is, maybe TMI saying to my brother, but we can track our cervical fluid to see and get to know, like, wow, okay, I know what's happening in my body. There's lots of ways. And I just want women to know this and then make the educated decision. If you still decide that for you, taking a pill every morning is easier and you don't want to get pregnant and you feel that this is the most beneficial and productive way, then that's your choice. But we need to have the whole picture before we make a decision. And there's not a lot of information out there, unfortunately, to make a whole decision.
Yeah, I think the whole idea of it's kind of bizarre, and I'm thankful for it just in terms of some of my life, but this idea of birth control and just feeding it to girls so that they don't get pregnant, but knowing that it totally fucks up and messes up their hormonal balance and all of these things that you're speaking to. Again, I'm a novice, but it's quite bizarre that that's what we've turned to, and that we put that expectation on young women to take on that burden and pretend that it's not going to impact the rest of their life from outside of their sexual intercourse lifestyle, but also from just the longevity and just the natural hormones. It's what you guys are. It's what makes women so unique and special and strong and powerful. And the fact that we just totally suppress that just to avoid pregnancies is kind of crazy. And I know from my perspective, if I was given that option to, and we've talked about this before, but if I was given the option to take a pill that would mess up my hormones and make me angry or make me whatever, like 70% of the time, I would not sign up for that. So yeah, it's pretty sad and messed up that's just the norm. And like you said, that it's one thing to make that decision for yourself, but the fact that no one's even educated on alternatives or the overall bigger picture before making that decision, that's I think where we're lacking.
Hmm. Well, there's not no one educated. There's definitely a movement. And I
Yeah.
feel thankful to have learned about this at a time when I'm still menstruating. I feel like there's a lot of women in the generation above me who have kind of started to now get this information and maybe they're going through menopause. So there's definitely a movement and that's part of my mission. And I would like to, maybe eventually weave this into educating young girls so that it is starting younger. But I just wanted to say one thing of just to not keeping girls from getting pregnant. There's a really cool documentary called The Business of Birth Control. And in it, it talks about how, I mean, birth control was developed in the 60s during the feminine wave, the feminism movement. And so it's not only just to prevent pregnancy, it's so that women can continue to be productive, functioning, contributing members of society every single day of their lives, and that you don't need to rest and you don't need to slow down and you don't need to pause because you're bleeding. You can still be a member of capitalism and productivity and basically holding our bodies to the lens of a man's body, which is on a very different hormonal cycle. Men's hormones fluctuate like every 3 to 6 months. If you look at a chart of women's hormones next to men's hormones, it's a totally different experience, which explains why we have such different experiences. But yeah, and that's a lot of what menstrual seasons go into, is this idea that each phase of our cycle is correlated to a season. And again, it's as you get to know yourself, we remember how much of nature we just are. We are not separate. We are not apart from nature. So it's also a nice grounding practice in that. But our bleed is our inner winter. It's our time to rest. It's our time to turn inward. It's our time to come back to ourselves and slow down and reflect and communicate with the higher world. And if you're on birth control or if you work a 9 to 5, I mean, even being an educator, it's hard to create that space of rest and self-nourishment and really slowing. So it's not on accident. And I would recommend watching that documentary for anybody who's more interested in, I don't think that it necessarily goes into, I can't remember if it talks about any like alternative birth control methods, but it's a business, the medical system in general.
It's called The Business of Birth Control.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'd have
I
to
will
see like
tune
who
in.
made it. Yeah, but it's educational for sure.
All right. So I kind of want to go two routes. One being talking through how this gets incorporated into the education system. We have sex ed in middle school, but probably, I don't know what your thoughts are, probably not to the levels that we should. In reflection on my experience, it wasn't very deep at all. So, how we incorporate this throughout within our education system in order to continue to educate young girls. And I mean, even on the male side, too, I think it's important for us to understand
Mm-hmm.
not only ourselves, but also the opposite sex as well. And then part of me, a little dicey, kind of wants to ask about gender roles. And not that gender roles have to be this strictly defined one role or another, but speaking to our differences, our very unique differences in our innate hormonal balances and just construction, how that plays into modern society, like you said, and what alternatives we have to, instead of medicating women to be able to go, how we can maybe lean into our natural construct and work that way. So I don't really know how you want to take that, but
Mm-hmm.
those are the two main thoughts that came to mind in what you were saying.
Okay, sorry, what was the first thought again?
just education and how we get this
Okay.
type
Yeah.
of stuff
Well,
into the school
so
systems for people to learn.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, and that's it. This is still considered alternative education or alternative medicine. So I think that's
Which
part
is
of the
crazy.
foundation of the issue is this is an alternative. 55% of your population is going through this. There's no
Yep.
alternativeness about this. This is real. I was really heartbroken and I to be honest have not checked into it anymore, but when I was still in Florida, there was a lot of red states removing sex education from schools in general. So meanwhile, we're feeding all of these young kids hormone infused milk. Girls are starting to bleed 8, 9 years old. And any type of sexual education conversation is being removed and not happening till maybe seventh, maybe eighth grade, maybe high school, if the school is having it. So, and again, I'm not super into politics. I don't know. I can't give you tangible examples. I don't want to get in a fight about that. But I do think that it's very evident that we're moving in a way of limiting education more. And unfortunately, there's a lot of kids who do not have parents at home who are going to teach them body literacy for male or
Mm.
female or anything in between. Anybody who doesn't identify as that, at the end of the day, your body is still going to be going through some hormonal changes in some capacity. So how would I like
And
to infuse this? So I found this woman who's based in Oregon who basically teaches body basics and beyond. And she set up a program for teaching girls about not only the changes in their body, but also body self-esteem and loving yourself through those changes and all of this. And I think it's super cool. And it's something that one could get educated and certified in. And I really came here with the idea of I want to do that. I think that that would be really cool. And is it actually practical to think that I would be able to do this in a school system? Maybe if I lived in Portland, Oregon, but I don't right now.
I think that's what excites me about Lumity so much is, and just beyond Lumity, just the trajectory of where we're going with technology and media is there's really an opportunity to reshape education. And while traditional schooling is outdated and not very practical, and we've both listened to, I don't want to mispronounce her name, but Anna Lorena Fabregra, her her whole concept of education is really fascinating. But the way I see it is education is shifting very much so, and the landscape of what it looks like is drastically changing, and more people are going into homeschooling. The
Hmm.
access to information continues to be more and more available. And with that, with new platforms, again, part of my philosophy with Lumity is to allow people to learn about what they're what they want to learn about and what they should learn about, and to give people a platform to further promote their learnings into teachings. And
Mm.
so giving people the space beyond just YouTube and Twitter, which can kind of drown out some of the more productive and specifically focused content,
Mm.
um, and allow people like yourself that have spent time learning and spent time studying to then become subject matter experts in women's reproductive health, and then be able to point people to the proper resources that are out there, the
Mm.
proper books, the proper podcasts, the proper articles, videos, etc., that you've already gone through and you've delved through to find out what's the best, what makes the most sense, and just pulling back the curtain of what education can look like and the many different forms that it can take. And I think that's super important as we advance and move through the world. Again, we recognize how slow the government moves, and it's hard to find hope that our education system is going to change anytime soon because it's
Mm.
such a cumbersome process. And yeah, so it excites me not only for Lumity, but just other platforms and other technologies to come out to really enhance the learning experience and give people more access to learnings outside of the traditional classroom setting.
I agree. And I'm really thankful to see this movement happening. And I mean, I think that was actually like a beautiful byproduct of COVID. I think a lot more people questioning the school system and how much time we spend in it
Mm-hmm.
and how much do we actually learn. And safety is a huge thing within the US, within that realm. And
Very true.
yeah, I'm really happy to see this alternative space growing. And it's definitely something that I feel myself a part of in my own way. And it's something that I could envision for my life, like dream, have a couple acres, have a little school, kids leave around like 1 or 2. I tend to my herbal apothecary and make tinctures and have women's circles by night, have some chickens. That's what I'm trying to get to. And I'm thankful for where I am right now along that process. But yeah, I think that, again, just going back even to taking empowerment over our own health. If we don't like the systems that are in place, let's build our own. And I think people are
Mm-hmm.
feeling really inspired and motivated to do that. And it's happening and it's really cool. And we're really lucky to be a part of a time where we have that freedom and that ability to choose something different.
100%. And to wrap this up, I'll ask you, and I'll leave it open-ended. You can make it more directed towards women or in general. I think your focus is more women's reproductive health. So what's one practice listeners could incorporate into their life today? And yeah, let's focus in on women. What's one practice women of the audience can incorporate today that they very quickly see the benefits of from your experience, from your studies, etc.?
It's a good one because, the idea is not to change everything and
Generalize,
revamp
yeah.
everything and do everything differently and that's how you'll be healthy. It shouldn't be overwhelming. It shouldn't be intimidating. So what's one small
Mm-hmm.
thing you can do? I would say just notice what day of your cycle you're on. Day 1 starts the first day of your bleed. And even if you are on hormonal birth control, day 1 can still be the first day of your bleed. And I say journal only because I really think that if you just say, okay, I'm going to think about that it's day 7 of my cycle, you're not going to do that every day. So
Mm-hmm.
finding a way to keep track of that. And I know that there's apps. I'm not really a big app user in that way. I like paper to pen. Or no. Yeah, paper to pen,
Pen to
hand to
paper.
paper, pen to paper, all those forms. Just start to notice. Just start to
Mm.
observe, start to notice where you're at and see if slowly and slowly some patterns start to emerge. And then just obviously it's so much easier said than done, but the point of this, I think what cycle tracking, the number one overarching thing that menstrual cycle awareness has gifted to me is compassion. Compassion for myself to say, yes, I was a raging bitch today and I don't feel good about the things that I said or the things that I did or that interaction that happened. But you know what? I'm on day 27 and I'm going to be bleeding in a few days and I get it and I have to give myself some grace. And when we give ourselves compassion, we give the world and the people around us compassion. And actually, I can even tie that into Ayurveda in that way too, that for me as a very fiery, pitic person, sometimes it could be hard to be around a really in their depths of kapha, slow and groggy and kind of stuck in that spiral. And this is the negative side of kapha. Every dosha has beautiful, amazing, wonderful things and the
Mm-hmm.
dark shadows too. So kapha is our grounded rock, right? It's our earth, it's our water, it's the fluid but reliable source that is so nurturing. I love me some earth sign energy. But as a very productive go, go, go person, it might be really easy for me to be frustrated with somebody who's like, oh, just sluggish and can't really make the decision and can't make that thing happen. But when I have the lens of that's just a part of them, that's a part of who they are,
Mm.
just like my frustration and anger is a part of who I am, it's so much easier for me to be compassionate and for me to have some empathy and understand. And when I have that with myself through these practices, it stops just being only about me. Yeah, I'm on day 27 and maybe she is also on day 27 and that's why she made me be a raging bitch, you know? There's always a lens of understanding and that only comes through self-understanding. So I guess even if that could be a practice, just pick a practice to cultivate self-understanding. And through that, self-compassion. And through that, that blossoms to being able to share that with our environment.
I love it. Yeah, I think on that Lumity journal, I think on the spine it says, wisdom is to know thyself. So I think that's a great message to preach. Real quick, just out of curiosity, so the later days in the month, based off of your own calendar, are the worst? You're
Also,
saying
I
day
mean,
27?
you've heard PMS,
Yeah.
premenstrual syndrome. I mean, PMS is premenstrual symptoms. But there's some other nice acronyms that are like PMS. Oh, I can't think of what it is right now. I want to say coming into my pattern or like prioritizing myself. PMS, prioritizing myself. And that's
mm,
our luteal phase. So that's basically, right? So when we're bleeding, all of our hormones are at the lowest they are. We start to move into our inner spring. Our hormones are rising, our estrogen, our progesterone, our testosterone, everything's rising. Our ovulation is the peak. It's the full moon. It's the summer season. Everything is blooming and bright and we're sexy and we know it and we're confident and we can do everything because this is when we were designed to do everything. This is when we were designed to find a mate and get pregnant. Biologically.
mm.
Do I think that that's what we are meant to do? Hell no. We can do that if we want, but we don't have to do that. But energetically and hormonally, this is the time where we are beaming. And again, when you start to track this and you know I'm ovulating, like my skin is clear. I do feel good. I do want to go out. I do want to say yes to things. And then after our hormones reach that peak of ovulation summer, they start to wind down. So usually we would ovulate around day 4. Well, we ovulate for like 3 to 5 days. So this is going to be around day 12, 13, 14, 15, maybe day 11. After that, we're going to start coasting down. And obviously the goal is to coast smoothly. But if our hormones are out of whack, we're not coasting smoothly. It might be jam into the ground. So right after ovulation, those hormones are slowly, hopefully starting to lessen and stop producing. If we were impregnated, then that process would happen. But if not, our hormones keep trickling down until our egg, that 2 weeks for our egg to be released, and then we bleed. So, you know, right after ovulation, usually it takes a week or so. Like you're still maybe feeling it. You're starting to notice, okay, I'm getting a little bit more tired. But depending if you bleed between day like 28 to 35, yeah, by day 27, you might be done with the bullshit. But this is also can be a really great time. This is often when our boundaries are the strongest. This is often where we say what we mean. We say what we need to say that we probably haven't been saying. So all of these, let's say, negative stereotypes or negative connotation around PMS, they can be hard and they can be difficult and challenging, but they can also be really beautiful and really important for certain situations in our lives. And it's about harnessing that power. And we're so lucky. I feel so lucky to have this cycle going on inside of me. Men don't have this. Just got to kind of figure it out. Okay, I guess I'm just in a bad mood today. I don't know why, but I guess just something's going on. But we get to have this inner dialogue and this inner, almost like an inner knowing, an inner compass.
Yeah, that's pretty magical. The whole time you were talking about it, I was just thinking, damn, the cycle is so beautiful.
That sounds good, but then your hormones are a
I
little
know,
bit
I
out of
know,
whack and you're in excruciating pain.
I know.
So that's what I'm trying
Yeah,
to solve right now. And this is it.
I've
Like,
seen
it's
you.
a process. I mean, yeah, you've seen me in throwing up, like really bad pain. And
Yeah.
I've been studying and working with this for 6, 7 years. It's a process. So don't give up. If
Hmm.
you're listening to this and you're like, oh, but really, I have to like this thing, I have to love this thing, don't give up. It's really, it can be such a beautiful relationship that we get to have with ourselves. And it does take some work.
Mm. Well, yeah, thanks for sharing that. I definitely learned a lot just from that little snippet alone. And I think that's a good way to wrap. I want to get into some rapid fire questions now. In the testing phase, seeing what goes well, seeing what doesn't. So I'm just going to throw some questions at you, open or answer as quickly as you can. Try not to put too much thought into it, just whatever comes to mind. And
Okay,
yeah, I'll revamp and revise as I see fit.
cool.
So recommend one book.
Wild Power
Wild
by,
Power.
yeah, Menstrual Health. Wild Power by Sajane. Oh gosh. Okay, sorry. It's been a long day. I can't, I'll type the authors to you and we can put it in the book notes, but
Okay.
oh yeah, Wild Power.
Okay. Best piece of advice you've ever received.
Slow down.
Mm. Mm. One podcast, YouTube channel, or just content creator in general that you follow.
A lot, but I will say I haven't listened to that as many podcasts recently, but a podcast that I really love is a little bit more on like the herbalism, spirituality side is Mythic Medicine by Amber
Mythic
Magnolia
Medicine.
Hill.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're a lot better at this than Michael was. There's no better or worse, but yeah.
But sometimes there is.
Who's the smartest person you know?
Whew. I'm so blessed to know so many smart people. This is hard. I would definitely say that Taylor Bright is one of the smartest people I know.
Mm.
Elliot is pretty smart, man. I mean, PhD in chemistry, that's a totally different intelligence than I have. But then I want to think of somebody who's smart in a totally different way, like creative genius. All my friends. I got a lot of smart people.
Yeah, it's a difficult question because, like you said, intelligence comes in many shapes and forms. But from
I'll,
the friends I know, those are pretty good choices.
yeah, I'll say one non-friend for educational purposes. Maya Tawari is the Ayurvedic teacher that my teacher
Okay.
studied with, and she is who brought Ayurveda to women because, right, I mean, years and years and
Hmm.
years ago, women didn't have access to education. Women weren't allowed to do yoga. They weren't allowed in the ashrams. And Maya Tawari discovered Ayurveda that was written about women and worked really hard to get it out of out to the public. So she is a smart woman.
Beautiful. Okay. If you could solve one problem in the world, what would it be?
Could you solve one without other things, like the butterfly
That's
effect,
true.
Do you
Yeah.
really ever solve anything? I don't think that there's a way to solve war or racism or social class issues because I think that that's been around for all of humanhood. Maybe environmental, maybe I could solve that.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. All right, last one. Best piece of content you've consumed in the past 1 to 2 weeks.
That education podcast.
Oh,
The
okay,
I
nice.
yeah, the I we could maybe put it in the notes, but I
Yeah,
really liked that podcast. And honestly, as an educator, there wasn't that much that she said that I wasn't aware of or knew, but it was nice to hear that.
as both of us are trying to learn Spanish, It was an interview between Danny Miranda and I think her name's Ana Lorena Fabregra or something like
Yeah,
that.
I followed her on Instagram. Miss Fab Learning Lab, Ana Lorena Fabrega.
She's amazing, and she's been in the education space for quite some time and trying to revamp it and redefine what it looks like. So it was a great listen. I really enjoyed that one as well. Okay, so for some closing questions, put a bow on all of this. What do you love most about life?
That's a good question. I love the magic of life. Oh my gosh, okay, today, let me just tell you a small example of the magic of life. So, I got some plants. I've got this nice little backyard. I got some milkweed plants, which I didn't even know they were called milkweed, but someone told me, yeah, butterflies love these. There's lots of butterflies here in Guatemala. So I've been noticing some caterpillars. They're monarch caterpillars. They ate all the leaves off of it. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm happy to give away my milkweed to the caterpillars. This is what they're there for. I had a rough week, man. Parent-teacher conferences, post-holiday blues, some sadness. The little girl broke her wrist yesterday. It's been a hard week, and I was voice noting to a friend, kind of saying that, like, hey, I'm thinking of you and I'm missing you. It's been kind of a hard week. And I look out of my sliding glass door of my bedroom and I have a little table and chairs there, which I had just been thinking, wow, I haven't even sat in this. I have no free time. I haven't even sat in these chairs. And 3 beautiful green with almost like gold shimmers cocoons are
Oh,
hanging
wow.
from the backs of the chairs. So these caterpillars migrated from the milkweed to the chairs and built their cocoons. And they're going to be born here, and they chose this to be their home. And it's like everything melted away. The magic, the little pieces of magic that just make you forget all of the stress and the bullshit and the mundane of the everyday. And we have to be open to those little magics, or else, yeah, it wouldn't be my favorite part of life.
That's beautiful. I got a couple of chills during that. That's powerful. And
Hmm.
the logo of Lumity is a butterfly too, so it's pretty fitting.
Hmm.
I think that's where we'll wrap. I think that was a pretty magical
Yeah.
moment to end on. So I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart so much for taking the time. Just hit an hour and a half, and it was a very special conversation. I'm super thankful for it. I look forward to having many more across the span of our lifetime.
Hmm.
Proud to be your brother, and
Oh.
we'll get some more recorded, some more off camera as well. But where you can find Brianne, she's on Instagram at _breeze_garden, and Breeze is BREEZE. That's where you'll find a lot of her educational stuff, more on the women's reproductive health, stuff like that. Um,
Astrology. Astrology
Astrology,
there
yeah. What's
too.
today? The autumn equinox.
Today is the autumn equinox, and in the busyness of life, I haven't honored yet. So this feels like a really nice way to close the summer, do something new, move into a new chapter. And yeah, maybe we can all spend a little time this weekend. Well, I guess by the time if anybody listens to this, it will be after. But hey, let's
Yeah.
you and I dedicate a little time this weekend to welcoming in a new season and maybe thinking about some intentions for a new season.
Beautiful. She's also
Hmm.
on Lumity as Brianne Keil, just her first and last name. And with that, I'll give you a chance to say any last words, Brie.
Yeah, thanks so much. I feel super honored. This is my first time ever being on a podcast. I hope people listen just because I do think there's lots of education in this for others to hear. And yeah, I'm proud of you. I think it's super cool that you're following your dreams. And yeah, maybe the cocoons feel like a blending of so many things. I was voice noting Sam, who's like a botanical butterfly artist. So then
Mm,
coming into this, I really pray that I get to see them erupt and I get to watch their process and just be reminded of the process of our lives too.
for sure. Yeah, that'll be a very cool thing to witness and to follow the trajectory. And hopefully you get some
Hmm.
more coming soon with all that milkweed. But yeah, thanks again. Greatly appreciate it. We'll continue this conversation soon. I will be visiting you in Guatemala soon, so hold it down for me.
Keep
And
learning
again,
Spanish. Poco a poco.
yeah. And to the listeners, thank you again for tuning in. Super excited for what's to come. Subscribe on Apple, YouTube, and Spotify, and tap in weekly for some new cool guests, just like Breezy Bree. So thanks everyone. We'll
Hey.
talk to you soon. And that does it for this episode of Passion Fruit. Hopefully you got something out of this conversation, whether it's a newfound curiosity, a spark of inspiration, or anything else. I'd encourage you to reflect on the episode and the insights shared. Ask yourself some of these more meta questions and see what you come up with for an answer. Again, Passion Fruit is brought to you by Lumity, our social education platform designed to help you connect with others and learn and grow in the interests of your choosing. It's a judgment-free zone where we simply want you to spend your time more wisely and engage in positive and productive content. We look forward to you joining our community and contributing to something special that we're building. See you next week. Cheers.